Today, President Trump is expected to sign an executive order that would allow TikTok to continue operating for its 170 million users here in the U.S. That's the number. Might include babies, dogs, and plants, but that's a big number. White House officials say a proposed deal for TikTok satisfies a law passed by Congress back in 2024. The law underlying all this conversation, the law said that the China-based parent company ByteDance had to divest or face a ban. That deal is expected to move TikTok's U.S. operations to a joint venture based in this country with a majority of American investors and owners involved. It will control the algorithm, that consortium, here in the U.S. and oversee security. Joining us now to break down what is and what is not part of this deal is Christopher Krebs. He's the former director of the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, and he's a CBS News contributor and a friend of mine. Chris, thank you very much for being here. I'm tempted to ask you where the heck this 170 million users number comes from, because it seems everyone just says it and it's so unbelievably large, but I'll instead go to the substance here.
There are definitely dogs in there.
There's definitely dogs in there, but no one knows your dog on TikTok. That's the good thing. Does this deal, as it's outlined, meet the security concerns that many members of Congress have regarding TikTok?
I think that's a huge question, and one that the chairman of the China Select Committee that actually, originated this legislation and drove it to passage last year has. He had comments earlier this week and last week about that full divestiture requirement that's contemplated in the law. As it stands, and as the reports at least indicate, TikTok, or ByteDance rather, will have a 19.9% control of the company. We don't know what comes with that. They get a board position, one of 7. They aren't sitting on the Security Audit Committee, but we're still waiting from a governance perspective to see what that 19.9% of control contains. And there are other concerns, but for the most part, I think there's a lot of good that's contemplated in this deal. It's going to take some time, and there's still some questions on operationally how it's going to play out and what the user is going to experience on a daily basis.
I mean, that's one of my questions, Chris. If ByteDance is presumably going to have a seat on the board, how is that the U.S., completely severing ties with ByteDance? They're still going to have a say, right?
Yeah, I mean, a security maximalist, a governance absolutist would say that in no way does that represent a total divestiture. It simply doesn't. They retain some kind of control, and I suspect that's in part due to the piece of the Chinese Communist Party. President Xi has a say in this matter. There are export control requirements from China, and part of that deal is likely that they would have to retain some sort of revenue share, some sort of something else. It's just not clear, and we may never really know what that means, unfortunately.
Chris, while we have you here, let's turn to this threat uncovered this week in New York. It was uncovered by the U.S. Secret Service. They say that at the UN General Assembly, while it's going on here in New York, they uncovered a plot to cripple the cell network of New York City and the surrounding area. What do you know about this? How serious could it be?
Well, from what I understand, this was an ongoing investigation into what originated as some threats that were sent via text to members of the administration, the current and possibly the prior as well. And so this was a multi-agency investigation. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, ultimately the Secret Service, announced what was effectively a SIM farm. So the little cards that go into your cell phones, those can go into boards that are commercially available that then connect to the cell signal. They can then push out massive text messages, spin up social media accounts, things like that. Yes, there are possibilities that it could overwhelm the cell system. But what I suspect happened here is that this was a 95% of the time a criminal or fraud network that 5% of the time, and that's just conjecture, but 5% of the time could be used by foreign actors to conduct espionage, to launch some disruptive attack against the cell network. But do keep in mind, Tony, that you live up in a community of about 20 million plus people, and it's a fairly robust cell network, and there are a bunch of security folks that have, at least in the law enforcement and emergency services community, that have prioritized access. So as New Yorkers, I think, should feel comfortable and confident that they're safe and secure.
I don't know. How's the internet in your house? Does it work all the time?
Spotty.
Spotty, I would say, yeah.
Chris Krebs, thank you so much.